Welcome to Digital Nation, your weekly tour of the best of local TV from across the UK. And it's local television that unearths the stories you don't normally get to see. On this week's show, after deep-fried confectionery comes milkshakes. Sounds tricky? We meet the man with the secret recipe. We visit a Scottish titan to uncover the nation's golden age in shipbuilding. And we hear from a marathon man on a mission in Bristol. We begin our journey with a long-forgotten story. Historian Daniel Gray tells us about the military hero from Edinburgh, Hector MacDonald, a local lad who made good but suffered an unfairly and ceremonious end.
MacDonald rose far up the ranks of the army. He was a masterful, shrewd tactician. In 1898 in North Africa, he was credited with saving the lives of hundreds of British soldiers under Lord Kitchener. He was rewarded with a knighthood, and yet all was not quite how it seemed. By 1903, MacDonald had been dispatched to Ceylon, known as Sri Lanka now. He took charge there of a ragtag British establishment army. He brought discipline and he was disliked for it. There were rumours all his life that MacDonald was gay. This just added to the suspicion of him among that establishment. They didn't like the fact that a lad from the working class had come and taken charge of them. And if MacDonald was gay and outed, he would of course be thrown out of the army. Allegations surrounded him, stories. One such was that he'd been caught acting inappropriately as a member of a dubious club. He was charged and sent back to Britain. He arrived back in London, but was told to go back to Ceylon and face the court-martial there. MacDonald travelled via Paris, stopping there on the night of March the 24th, thinking the world was unaware of his plight. He went down for breakfast the next morning and picked up a newspaper. He turned to the front page and saw the headline: Sir Hector MacDonald faces grave charge. He went back up to room 105, put his boots under his bed, his uniform in his wardrobe, took a pistol from his suitcase and shot himself. Once those who worshipped Hector passed away, so too did his memory. It was kept hush-hush, perhaps by the authorities, the establishment, that didn't like this uppity working-class lad who'd risen right to the top. Hector MacDonald's was a life full of these rumours, suspicions, strange little stories. And yet, we can be sure of this: he was a hero to tens of thousands of people in this country. Another hidden story in this city full of them.
Over now to a cafe in Oxford where you can never be bored. Not with 2,000 board games on offer. Now where did I put my dice?
The owner, Mr. John Morgan, was a member of a regular meet-up group that played Dungeons and Dragons, and on an occasion when they couldn't get together, somebody brought along a card game called Munchkin, which he kind of was blown away at the innovative use of the game and how clever it was, how clever it was made, so he looked into it a bit more, and there's all these wonderful, wonderful games, you can see behind me a selection of them, that people just don't know about, so he created this place for people to come together and experience the modern variety of board games.
Simon expressed to me how it feels to be the first ever UK board games cafe.
Oh, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. There are other examples of this all over the world, in Canada and Korea and China in particular, there's a lot, but here in the UK, it's been really popularly received. You know, we have 2,000 titles in our library now, we book out every weekend, and it's just nice to see so many people coming together and playing games.
I asked Simon if this was the type of cafe that Oxfordshire needs and why.
I'd say that every city needs somewhere like this, somewhere where you can go, you can compete, you can meet new people and have a fun time. We have a lot of people who've just arrived in the city, who might be students or might have just moved here for work purposes, who might not know a lot of people, and they can come here and meet other gamers and build up a new social circle based around a shared love of gaming.
Time to take a trip to Glasgow to find out more about our industrial heritage and the UK's golden age in shipbuilding. I don't know about you, but I reckon this story about Clyde's Titan crane is truly riveting.
We're actually standing on what used to be part of John Brown's shipyard, and in the background you can see the Titan crane, which is one of 60 Titan types built worldwide. Only 11 of these have survived. Titan is the only one that is open to the public. What made Titan revolutionary was the fact that, well, first of all, it was an electrically operated crane, but it also was erected at a time when John Brown's, who'd only just taken over the yard in 1899, were investing a huge amount of money in its development. Brown's, by that period, we're talking about 1905 up until the 1960s, was receiving substantial orders which, in many cases, were quite revolutionary. The crane actually weighs 800 tons, and the foundations of the crane go down to a depth of 80 feet. There are 250,000 rivets holding it in place. It's part of an industrial heritage of which we've preserved very, very little. Here we had one surviving example of the golden age of Clyde shipbuilding, an industry which actually this town owes its very existence to. So there's a whole part of local heritage here that's invaluable and has to be saved. And now you've got the chance to actually go, visit and experience it.
Over in Norfolk, we meet a local club making a real splash by specialising in water sports for the deaf and hearing impaired.
They started off with homemade water skis towed by a broom handle attached to a washing line. But now the club has a membership of 45 people, and it's having an international impact, with one member off to the European Championships later this month. Today they've been hosting an open day to allow children from across Norfolk to give the sport a try. Malcolm Sinclair's one of those helping out. He took up the sport 8 years ago and qualified as a coach in 2013.
When I arrived here in Norfolk a few years back, there was nothing available at this club, no qualified coaches, no deaf coaches as such. We invited lots of deaf children to come and participate in this sport, but we had no qualified coaches at that time and no one who could sign. And the number of deaf people has grown, it grows annually, and it's nice now to see the deaf children coming and deaf adults coming, and also deaf friends and families as well. I enjoyed it because it was fun, and I was trying to do my best to get up on my skis, and I like to see my family, do really well. I feel really proud that my family have achieved water skiing as well. I can take part in the sport here and also show other people that you can do these things, and be part of this community here.
Training up the next generation is what's made the Bluebird Club last this long. And it seems there's no shortage of new recruits interested in the ride ahead.
So how much do you know about where you live? Well, there's one thing you can be sure of. We live in a truly creative kingdom.
So you thought chocolate bars were invented in France or Switzerland? You must be a bit flaky. The real home of proper choc is Bristol. Chocolate's been around for ages, of course. But when the Aztecs discovered it, they used it as a drink. Then the Spaniards got hold of it in the 16th century, and then the French had a go at eating it. But it still melted in the box, not in your mouth. Then along came a doctor from Bristol called Joseph Fry, who decided to make it solid. So in 1847 he melted down cocoa powder, extracted cocoa butter and loads of sugar, bunged it into a mould and made a chocolate bar with a quintessentially British name. Because when it comes to creativity, innovation and pretending to be a bit French, in Brizzle the shizzle.
Now it's time for the Grand Prix of the Sea, in powerboats, of course. Let's head over to Cardiff to find out more.
I'm on a boat, a powerboat. But what is a powerboat? I'm going to ask Robert Wicks from Powerboat P1.
Well, this is not just any sort of powerboat. This is a high-performance race boat that's here for the Cardiff Grand Prix of the Sea this weekend here in Cardiff Bay. And powerboats come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but this is quite a unique and very special boat, one of a kind really. And the boats that we're going to see racing this weekend in Cardiff Bay are all from the same mould, from the same design. So a one design series coming to Cardiff Bay. This will be our second year here, and lots of excitement in prospect.
How fast do these things go?
Well, this will run at 70 miles an hour, which on water is fairly quick. And the unique thing about our racing series is they're all one design boats. So every boat is running more or less the same speed. The propellers are identical, the engines are sealed so nobody can play around with the engines, and the hulls are identical. So the only variable really in our racing series is the crew that's in the boat. So a lighter crew on water like we've got in Cardiff Bay this weekend is going to probably have something of an advantage over a heavier crew. The teams can ballast the boats with a little bit of fuel, but give or take a couple of miles an hour, they're all going to be running at very, very similar speeds. So it's going to make for some very exciting racing this weekend. In addition to the boats this weekend, we're going to have the P1 Aquacross Championship. This is the penultimate round of that championship as well. And the skis run up at 70 miles an hour as well. They're 300 horsepower, big Kawasaki's, Yamahas and Sea-Doos in the biggest of our three classes. And they'll be running about the same speed as the boats. And if you think it's fast on a boat, never mind 70 miles an hour on a jet ski, that's something else. And a half hour, 30-minute endurance race for these guys is, very difficult conditions. And, to run at that sort of speed for that length of time, gives you a sense of the sort of racing involved.
That's it for part one, but before we go, it's quiz time. Opened in 1883, which UK city runs the world's oldest electric railway? Is it A, Glasgow, B, Leeds, or C, Brighton? Join us after the break for the answer. Welcome back to Digital Nation. Before the break, we asked you which UK city runs the world's oldest electric railway, which opened in 1883. The answer is C, Brighton, the Volks electric railway created by Magnus Volk, and it's still running today. They're well dressed in Leeds, and that might have something to do with the city's tradition of fine tailoring. This recent exhibition gives us the measure of it.
So Tailored, a very British fashion, looks at tailoring in fashion from the 18th century to today, and we look at things like how tailoring works, whether it's bespoke or ready to wear, tailoring at work, in fashion, and dressed up for special occasions and country and sport.
Okay, so when we arrive, we see here these two very different kind of outfits. What are these both?
So the idea is to show how different tailoring can be. So we've got a kind of classic 1830s frock coat that would have been made for quite a small chap by his own personal tailor, and then looking at a Vivienne Westwood piece just shows how different tailoring can be. Same skills but a completely different outcome.
It is amazing how much it's changed over the years. I can't really see myself fitting that well in either of the jackets, to be honest. I'm not sure how well they would suit me, but you know what, around here there might be something else that does suit me. What do we have over here?
So this is, both of these pieces were made specially for the exhibition by Catherine Sargent, who is from Leeds. She's a Savile Row tailor. She was the first female head cutter on Savile Row, so we approached her and it's been great working with her. She's made us a kind of classic Savile Row suit in a cloth that's been specially designed for us as well and finished in a Yorkshire mill. And then the jacket that's not finished, obviously, to show some of the work that goes into Savile Row tailoring and why it is that it's kind of world renowned. Still, people from all over the world will have a suit made on Savile Row, and just some of the kind of processes that go into making that jacket fit you perfectly.
Deep fried milkshake, anyone? A chip shop in Lancashire have perfected their unusual recipe to include banana, strawberry and chocolate, all coated in a fine and crispy batter. But would you swap it for your fish chips or chicken and mushroom pie? I'll let you decide.
We've been creating it for about 2 months now. It took me maybe about 6 weeks to get it right. We had a few mishaps, obviously. But now we've finally got it right, and we're selling lots of it.
John is no stranger to experimenting with food. The deep-fried mince pie, the deep-fried McDonough, and the giant deep-fried Ferrero Rocher are just some of the culinary delights that have found themselves on the menu. These ideas have gained the chippy worldwide recognition. The deep-fried milkshake includes all the classic milkshake flavours, including banana, strawberry and chocolate. But will this variety be enough to attract people to mix their chips with?
Not right. No, not for me. Traditional me, fish and chips, mushy peas, thanks very much. Pay your money and off you go.
I think it'd be amazing. I would definitely try it.
I'd try it. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I can't see how they're going to do it without it leaking out. Even if it was frozen to start with, it would be very difficult to fry it and still stop it leaking out.
And other people were also unsure at first at how this would be achievable. But John is not willing to reveal his secret just yet.
They're just starting to get popular now. It took me a week or two just to get them going. But the main thing is when people, we tell people about them, is like, you know, how on earth you manage to keep it together? Well, that's my own creation, that's my secret.
Love it or hate it, the deep fried milkshake is certainly another proud dish to add to John's extensively unique collection.
Over now to Sheffield, where a local community has unearthed a neglected cemetery in Ward's End and have brought it back to life.
I work at Hillsborough College, which is just up the road, and I work with students with various degrees of disability, and one of the things that we do is we look at the environment and some of the damage that people have done to it. And I've brought students walking down here for the last couple of years and sort of discovered almost by accident this cemetery, which was just being completely neglected, very overgrown, lots of things that you wouldn't want going on here. And really what I thought was that as a college we could actually do something to help and raise awareness of this cemetery.
There's two elements to the project. The first one is what we call the archaeological question, and that's what do we want to find in the ground, what we're trying to dig up. And that's a Victorian mortuary chapel. It served Sheffield for 100 years, buried 30,000 people, and we don't have any idea what it looked like inside. There's no records of it. So we're digging that up to find out what it looked like inside, where the tiles, what the floor looked like. The second part of the project, which is a little bit bigger, a little bit more interesting, is a sociological question. How does people getting actively involved in their heritage improve their lives? Does it make them feel more local, give them a stronger sense of local identity? So the people who've been participating have been filling out questionnaires for us, and we try to gauge whether this has a positive effect on a local community.
It's actually a really good experience because I've never been so used to the outdoors this much. And I'm actually starting to do it at home now, which is a really good relief because I really like doing this project and I want to bring the history back towards End, which is really what people have forgotten.
To run a marathon is one thing, but to run over 400? Ben Smith is fighting bullying with his feet. He's crossing the nation for charity, notching up no less than 401 marathons on the trot.
So I'm going to be doing it to raise at least £250,000 for two amazing anti-bullying charities, Stonewall and Kidscape. So it's all about helping them provide the services that they need to help us prevent bullying within schools in the UK. Hopefully what we're trying to do with this challenge is show people that actually no matter what you go through in your past, you can stand up and be counted, and you can actually do something really positive with your life. Part of this challenge isn't just about me running one marathon on every day throughout the next 401 days, but I'm actually going to be talking in schools. I'm part of the role model programme for Stonewall UK, which is the big LGBT charity within the UK, and I'm going to be working with them in schools throughout the UK to talk about my experiences and really kind of not show myself as a victim of bullying, but show it more in a positive light and what can be done rather than how it affects you.
Excitement and nerves were in the air, but most of all proud moments from his family who supported Ben all the way.
Feeling really up, really proud of him, and basically if anybody can do it, he can. He's got the right mindset. He's obviously fit. He's done a lot of training, but it really does boil down on things like this, I think, too. If you've got the right mindset, you've got the ability to do it.
Oh, I'm quite nervous for him, quite anxious as a mum, and so excited for him, knowing how much work he's put in to being here at this point today and how ready and eager and hungry he is for it.
and off he goes, day one of Ben's challenge as he attempts the world record of 401 marathons in 401 days.
We don't just live in a digital nation, we live in an urban playground, where all you need is a strong imagination and a fearless attitude. But remember, these antics are for pros only, so don't try this at home, even if it is filled with concrete and iron railings.
Parkour is a discipline of movement, which allows you to use obstacles in your path, which typically channel you or constrain you, using those to create movement by using a series of techniques like climbing, running, jumping, vaulting and such. In terms of origins, as long as man has moved, we've done parkour in some sense, but parkour as we know it today has developed from a French discipline that was established in the early to mid 80s in the outskirts of Paris. You need nothing more than your imagination and a sense of, I suppose, self-awareness as well as self-respect and also self-confidence in order to try and progress in your movements. And we live in a playground, we live in an urban playground. It's the most wonderful place to practice. Every corner you turn is a potentially disused space by the public, but it's a space that we value more than anyone else. There's nothing stopping you beginning your journey personally just by looking around and having some fun. We see parents who lead their children down on tops of walls every day of the week. They hold their hand, they let them down, and they set them down at the end. It's about cultivating that mindset once more of exploring and using a public space in a safe way, but in a way that adults are generally frowned upon doing. And we wish to challenge that and ask why.
And finally, it's not easy bringing local TV to the entire nation, as we find out now at Made in Tyne and Wear. Here's an insider's look behind the scenes to show you just what we're on about. Just be aware of low-flying sets.
I was bound to spend at a very nice diamond store. Ooh. Diamonds, and that's gonna fall down. Ooh.
To want to leave. For sake.
Oh, so we'll cut there. Did you get it?
That's Johnny.
Like you say, like she said, ethically, you know, they feel obliged to do something.
I could hear it again, could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest with you, I've only spoken. Did you see his laughing there when he was speaking? Should be joined by his mother Edna after the...
my life.
When I was speaking to the detective, Deborah, she would...
I don't believe it. We're never gonna get it done.
And that concludes our weekly roundup of the best of local. If you've enjoyed this week's TV clips, then there's plenty more you can see by visiting the independent channel's on-demand services. And hopefully that should keep you fully stocked until next week, when we will be bringing you more local telly highlights in Digital Nation.